enough of me talking. There's a few very interesting individuals who are the real movers and shakers of part of our Tamil community. And without further ado, I'm super excited to actually introduce Anjali Narendran. She is only 18 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but she's super young, but yet in such young age, she has founded Tech Explorer as well as Startup Dojo. She came out of high school, hitting the ground, really focusing on entrepreneurship, and not only she did for herself, but what's really great about her is that she is helping other young people access resources for being entrepreneurs themselves. So without further ado, Anjali Narendran here to talk about what we can do for the next generation to really promote and elevate entrepreneurship. Anjali, over to you.
So hi everyone. Thank you again, Bren, for that incredible introduction. You're too kind. But to quickly rehash, my name is Anjali. I am 18-year-old program director at Startup Dojo, based in Canada. And before I really jump into things and really try to discuss how we can foster youth entrepreneurship, I'd like to start by sharing the story of someone that I find particularly inspiring. So I'd like to share the story of one incredible 14-year-old Tamil student that I had the privilege of working with. So when I first met Praveen, it was clear that he had this really cool spark in him, this creativity and massive potential, that he was disengaged and super shy. Sorry, next slide. Yeah, he was disengaged and super shy, and he couldn't really even look you in the eye. He'd just done maybe one or two extracurriculars, but at that point had quit everything and was really just doing the bare minimum to scrape by. He'd never done anything that would ever begin to deviate from the beaten path, not because he couldn't or not because he didn't want to, but rather because the school system had done a pretty good dang job of keeping him, as well as most other students, on it. Let's face it, the school system as it stands is really meant to teach students to listen and comply rather than to question and innovate. It goes the extra mile to make sure that students are kind of fitting into conventional molds, conventional paths. And I'm sure many of you can think back to when you were younger and imagine yourself in this kind of a situation. And with all of this considered, for a young kid, it's really scary to venture out completely in the dark like that, to venture away from what you think is expected of you and what you're supposed to do, and just venture into the dark. He just didn't have the confidence. But after a couple of months, something crazy happened. I'll always remember this. But he came up to me. This boy, who refused to engage with anything, came up to me and said, Anjali, I want to take on a new challenge. I want to build a photography business, and here are the first steps that I'm going to take. No way, that's amazing. There was this overnight transformation in just a couple of months. So now the question that I'm sure you're asking is, the $1,000,000 question is, how did Praveen get from point A to point B? What was the big change? So to answer that question, let's go back to what the underlying issue was. Fundamentally, there was a lack of confidence. He didn't have the confidence, so he was afraid to even slightly venture off of the path that he thought he was supposed to stay on, to even explore a bit, push against the walls. But the tricky thing about confidence is that you're not going to find it by, searching around. You're not going to find it hiding behind a tree or a bush somewhere. It's something that you can only build up for yourself from the ground up. But how do you build it? Using the 4 C's. So, renowned author and founder of the Strategic Coach, Dan Sullivan, discusses a really interesting concept called the 4 C's formula. So, it's this cycle of commitment, courage, capability, and confidence. Of course, Praveen didn't realize it at the time, but as he was taking on new challenges and working together, he was working his way through the 4 C's. Of course, we started off simple. Build your first resume, build a personal website. He hit the first stage of developing commitment by setting the goal. And of course, at the beginning, because he had no confidence and consequently no motivation, it took a bit of nudging to help him set the goal because he needed momentum to get rolling. But then he developed courage by looking the challenge in the eyes, realizing that it would be tough, but deciding to go ahead anyways. And once he climbed over the newest mountain, he could now look back at all the new capabilities that he had built for himself. Presentation skills, communication skills, and I'd say most importantly, this newfound sense of integrity that he could meet his own personal goals. And this gave him a newfound sense of confidence in himself. And once he had this little bit of confidence, he could use that confidence to catapult him into the next challenge and the next and the next, until finally he was able to push himself and change his attitude so that he could reach heights he previously thought was impossible. So for entrepreneurs in the room, I think that this process probably sounds familiar to how a lot of your growth, whether it be personally or in business, kind of panned out. Fundamentally, what's at the heart of human and business development is the simple 4Cs formula. So to kind of emphasize it a bit, I will now I'll rehash this, but with someone I'm sure you're all familiar with, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of the infamous and ubiquitous Facebook. Just like Pravin, Mark Zuckerberg started his entrepreneurial journey while he was still in grade school. He started with a simple messaging platform for his dad's dental practice called ZuckNet, and it was pretty simple. The purpose was just to help people upstairs communicate with people downstairs. Then that grew. He grew smaller and smaller projects that became more and more challenging, until eventually he's now built this behemoth that you and I now know as Facebook. And every time he took on a new challenge, he was just going through another cycle of the 4Cs: commitment, courage, capability, and confidence. Each iteration, he compounded. And so as he did this, his confidence grew exponentially, and so did his outcomes. So a quick second about me. So I'm 18. I founded a couple of ventures, and I'm also the host of the 2020 show, a World Robotics Champion. And I've had the privilege of working with some incredible people, like the founders of billion-dollar companies like Eloqua, which was acquired by Oracle in 2012. My journey also began when I was even younger than I am now, when I was 14 or 15, when I founded my first venture and was able to help over 1,000 students. Of course, when I began, I was just a scared kid who had no idea what I was doing. But pushing myself through that challenge and all the challenges that it brought on allowed me to cycle through the 4Cs more times than I can count and grow my confidence and capabilities. So that begs the question: if the 4Cs are the key to growing your entrepreneurial muscle, how do you even get started on the first iteration of the 4Cs? How do you get started when you have no momentum? So at Startup Dojo, we're addressing this problem there at the beginning, at the root. Through the same program that Praveen went through, personalized coaching and real business projects, students get support as they work through the 4Cs and build their entrepreneurial confidence and capabilities from the ground up. So how can you get started if you are a young student or an aspiring entrepreneur? Well, I'd like to share a complimentary gift from Startup Dojo. And this is an entrepreneurial scorecard that will help you to kickstart your journey. It'll help you take the first step to commitment by understanding where you are and allowing you to track your progress as you grow over time to where you want to be. So if you're a young, aspiring entrepreneur, or maybe you know any young, innovative minds, please ask them to fill out this scorecard. I promise it will bring you lots of value down the road. In fact, because I'm so genuinely passionate about giving back to this community, and all of the past things I've worked on have been about giving back, I want to commit to set up phone calls with the first 25 people who fill out this scorecard to help ambitious young Tamil students grow and kickstart their journeys as well. So I think that we will be sending this out after the event, but I'll also paste in a link into the chat right now. It's in the chat. And before I close off, if you are a parent, entrepreneur, or entrepreneurship advocate who'd also like to support our mission of bringing entrepreneurship to students across the world and really answering this question of how do we get more young people empowered to solve the world's biggest problems, please reach out at Anjali@mystartupdojo.com. Thank you.